Fantastic job. Thank you guys very, very much. Members, ladies, and friends, the purpose of this service is to honor our country's flag, to celebrate the anniversary of its birth, and to recall the achievements attained beneath its folds. It is quite appropriate that such a service should be held by the Order of Elks, an organization that is distinctly American, intensely patriotic, and without counterpart. Charity, justice, brotherly love, and fidelity are the cardinal principles of our order, and they are exemplified in all our services. By them, we teach the love of our country, of our countrymen, and loyalty to our American way of life. To be an elk is an American citizen who lives for his country and is ready to die for it. Please stand. The chaplain will lead us in prayer.
Almighty God, in this hour of patriotic observance of the birthday of the American flag, we ask you to bless our flag and the people of the United States. For all that our flag represents, both at home and abroad, we thank thee, and that through all our history as a nation, it has been an ensign of freedom, liberty, and opportunity. And through the years to come, may this flag wave as a banner of liberty, freedom, and enlightenment. May this service bring to each of us a sense of loyalty to our country and enable us to be better patriots, truer citizens, and more loyal Americans. To thy glory and to the honor of this great nation. Amen.
Thank you. You may be seated. That we may better understand the meaning of our flag, I call upon Brother Wally Amberger for the history of the flag.
Flags have been an important element in American history since the days of European exploration and settlement on the North American continent. During the 16th and 17th centuries, flags symbolized the rivalry and ambition of competing nations. The first European flag to arrive in the New World was also the first to leave. Around the year 1000, Eric the Red and other Viking explorers made wide-ranging voyages from their Scandinavian homelands. These Norse adventurers flew the Viking Sea Rover's banner, which was a black raven on a white field, on their journeys to Iceland, Greenland, and North America. Their interest in the West died out with the passing of the years. America had to be discovered all over again. Enter the flag of Spain. The rediscovery did not take place until almost 500 years later. On October 12, 1492, Columbus planted the royal banner of Castile and Leon, the flag of Spain, on San Salvador. In 1565, the Spanish established the first permanent settlement in what will become the United States at St. Augustine in Florida. Soon after Spain arrived on the American scene, other European nations began to show an interest in the new continent. In 1497, the Red Cross of St. George, for centuries the national flag of England, was flown by John Cabot, who, in searching for a waterway across North America to Asia, claims the land for England. Enter the flag of France. The lily banner of France was used in the French exploration of North America. In 1524, Giovanni di Verrazzano explores the North American coast while searching for a waterway west, and because of his explorations, France claims North America. In 1607, the English established their first permanent settlement in America at Jamestown in Virginia. In 1608, Samuel de Champlain establishes a French settlement at Quebec on the St. Lawrence River. In 1609, Henry Hudson sailed into what is now New York Harbor with the orange, white, and blue banner of the Netherlands. In In 1623, the chartered West India Company founded the province of New Netherlands along the Hudson River, claiming the region for the Dutch. In 1638, the flag of Sweden flew at a small settlement on the lower Delaware River near what is now Wilmington, Delaware. In 1682, Robert de La Salle claims the Mississippi Valley for France. He names it Louisiana after French King Louis XIV. But between 1754 and 1763, Britain and France, longtime enemies, waged war in both Europe and North America. Each claims ownership of the same territory. The British and the colonists fight the French and their Indian allies in battles that come to be known as the French and Indian Wars. In 1763, the Treaty of Paris ends the war and grants Britain control of Canada and lands east of the Mississippi River. The British Union now flew unchallenged from Canada to Georgia, except for the French city of New Orleans from the Atlantic to the Mississippi. The uniting of North America under one flag had been a long process. But what was unthinkable in 1763 became inevitable in 1776. During those 13 convulsive years, the British flag in America changed from a symbol of affection and benevolence to an emblem of hatred and oppression. Enter the pine tree flag. In 1775, General Washington fitted a squadron of 6 warships at his own expense. These vessels, generally known as Washington's cruisers, were commanded by Army captains and manned by soldiers. Only one vessel won a military victory. On November 29, 1775, the Lee, commanded by John Manley, forced the surrender of the British brig Nancy. Manley thus became the first American sea captain to win a naval battle, and the pine tree flag became the first American ensign to preside over such a victory. A second cruiser, the Washington, fell victim to the HMS Fowey on December 7, 1775, a date marked in history for another naval defeat 166 years later at Pearl Harbor. Enter the rattlesnake flag. Meanwhile, the rattlesnake theme was gaining increasing prestige with the colonists. Eventually, a coiled serpent at the foot of a tree was added to the pine tree flag. The slogan, "Don't tread on me," almost invariably appears on rattlesnake flags. The rattlesnake appears again and again in early American flags. The flag of this type was the standard of the South Carolina Navy. One of the variants was the emblem of the Culpeper men in Virginia, and still another was a rattlesnake superimposed on a plain yellow banner, which was known as the Gadsden flag. But why did the rattlesnake, an ugly creature, gain such prominence? 1, the rattlesnake is only found in the Americas. 2, the eyes of the rattlesnake exceed in brightness that of any other animal, and the colonists saw this as an emblem of vigilance. The fighting qualities of a rattlesnake are, it never begins an attack, and when once engaged, never surrenders. The colonists saw this as an emblem of honor and true courage. The use of its rattles as a warning to its enemies, and never strikes until it has generously given notice even to its enemy and cautioned him against the dangers of treading on it. Enter the Marco flag. The first American flag to represent the colonies by means of 13 stripes is believed to be the Marco flag of the Philadelphia Light Horse Troop. This yellow flag with an elaborate coat of arms in the center and 13 alternate blue and silver stripes in the canton is believed to have been designed by Captain Abram Marco, a Danish subject who formed and equipped the 28-man troop at his own expense. June 1775, the troop had the honor of escorting General George Washington from Philadelphia to New York on his way to Cambridge to take command of colonial troops assembled there. Late in 1775, Marco was forced to resign his commission when King Christian VII of Denmark forbid his subjects to fight against England. But the troop and its flag stayed in service and saw action at Trenton, Princeton, Brandywine, and Germantown. This flag is now preserved in the troops' armory in Philadelphia. Enter the Grand Union flag. In the latter part of 1775, the Continental Congress appointed a committee to consider the question of a single flag for the 13 colonies. The committee recommended the design of 13 alternate stripes of red and white, with an azure field in the upper corner bearing the red cross of St. George and the white cross of St. Andrew. This flag was known by many names: the Continental flag, the Congress flag, the Cambridge flag, the colors of the United Colonies, the Great Union, the First Navy Ensign, and the Grand Union. John Paul Jones, the senior lieutenant of the flagship Alfred, hoisted this flag to the masthead on December 3rd, 1775, and said, "I have hoisted with my own hands the flag of freedom." 1 month later, on January 1st, 1776, it was raised over the headquarters of General Washington at Cambridge, Massachusetts, in compliment, as he wrote, to the United Colonies. This flag, called the Grand Union, was used by the Navy as its exclusive ensign and was the first American flag to receive a salute of honor. On November 6, 1776, the U.S. brig of war, the Andrew Doria, received a salute of 11 guns from the Fort of Orange on the island of St. Eustatius in the Dutch West Indies. Here the sovereignty of the United States of America was formally acknowledged to a national vessel by a foreign country. There is a plaque presented to St. Eustatius by then President Franklin D. Roosevelt in 1939 to honor the occasion. But in response to a general demand for a banner more representative of our country, the Congress on June 14, 1777 provided that the flag of the United States be 13 stripes, alternating red and white, and that the Union be 13 stars, white on a blue field, representing a new constellation. Enter the Betsy Ross flag. The most famous early Stars and Stripes is the one for which generations of school children have learned was made by Betsy Ross for George Washington. The public knowledge of any role that Betsy Ross may have in regard to the flag came 94 years after the events in question. One of her grandsons, William Canby, told the Pennsylvania Historical Society in 1870 that his grandmother, who died at 84 when he was 11, had related the following story to him many times: that George Washington, Robert Morris, and George Ross called upon Mrs. Ross and told her they were a committee of Congress and wanted her to make a new flag. It is said that she suggested that the stars should have 5 points rather than 6. After presenting his paper, Canby secured affidavits from aunts who claimed to have heard the same story from Mrs. Ross's lips. This account strikes such a warm and appealing note that it has survived through all the years, despite the seemingly mortal blows dealt it by distinguished researchers, scholars, and historians. What then was the origin of the Stars and Stripes? The simple truth is no one knows, nor can anyone with reasonable certainty identify the designer or maker of the first Stars and Stripe banner. No individual or group ever received contemporary recognition for such a project. Despite the most intensive research by capable historians, the true story of the birth of our flag remains a mystery today. This complete absence of evidence suggests that the flag had no single ancestor nor any one designer. It was simply the logical culmination of revolutionary heraldry. The pattern, the colors, and the proportions had already been established by the Grand Union flag. The first official salute to the Stars and Stripes was given on February 14, 1778, off the French coast when the Ranger, under the command of John Paul Jones, was saluted by the French fleet. It is said that the same Ranger's flag was flown by Jones' ship, the Bonhomme Richard, in a thrilling fight by moonlight upon the high seas with the British frigate Serapis. When the Serapis struck her colors, the immortal fame of John Paul Jones was assured as the intrepid defender of the youthful republic. The siege of Fort Schuyler in 1777 marked a turning point in the heretofore successful British drive on Albany. By blocking off the important Mohawk Valley, the Fort Schuyler troops prevented Colonel St. Leger from joining with Burgoyne at the Hudson River. Burgoyne then sent the German commander Baum towards Bennington, Vermont, which was a vital supply base for New York and New England troops. American forces under General John Stark and Colonel Seth Warner marched out from Bennington to meet Baum. Stark exhorted his men, "With tonight the American flag floats over yonder hill where Molly Stark sleeps a widow." By sundown on August 16th, the encircled Hessian force had surrendered. Baum lay dying on the battlefield, and Molly Stark was preparing to welcome her husband home. Enter the Bennington flag. The Battle of Bennington is believed to mark the first appearance of an American flag bearing 13 stars and 13 stripes. Although this claim is not backed up by direct evidence, it is supported by three strong arguments. One, the flag associated with this battle is still preserved in the Bennington Historical Museum and remains unchallenged as the oldest stars and stripes in existence. The claim is corroborated by a coherent and continuous local tradition that dates back to this day. And three, it is generally accepted by almost every historian and scholar who has investigated and reported on Burgoyne's campaign and the revolutionary history of the New Hampshire grants, which Vermont was then called. This Bennington flag was originally owned by Nathaniel Fillmore, grandfather of Millard Fillmore, the 13th President of the United States. Nathaniel Fillmore was a lieutenant in Captain Elijah Dewey's militia company that fought at Bennington. The flag remained in the Fillmore family for more than a century and was returned to Bennington in 1926. The flag designer may have misunderstood the actual wording of the 13 alternate red and white stripes, because if you notice it starts with a white stripe instead of a red one. Or he may have deliberately arranged them white and red in accordance with the principles of heraldry. The use of the figure 76 can only be explained as a method of honoring and blazonry the year of our independence. Enter the Star-Spangled Banner. In 1795, 2 additional stars and stripes were added to represent the mission to the Union of Vermont and Kentucky. Under this banner of 15 stars and stripes, we fought the War of 1812. It was site of its flying over Fort McHenry on September 14, 1814, that inspired Francis Scott Key to write what was to become our national anthem, the Star-Spangled Banner. This flag, which flew over the fort, measured 42 feet by 30 feet. It had 11 holes shot in it during the battle and was presented to the Smithsonian Institution in 1912 by Eben Appleton, grandson of the fort's successful defender, Colonel Armistead. This flag is now undergoing restoration, partly because pieces of this flag were cut out and given to the defenders' families upon their death. There's approximately 8 foot of this flag which is missing. 3 different banners of 15 stars and stripes flew over historic milestones in the expansion of a nation. The national flag was raised over the nation's capital for the first time on November 17, 1800. On December 20, 1803, The French flag at New Orleans was hauled down and the Stars and Stripes hoisted in its place. The vast territory of Louisiana was now in American soil at a cost of only $15 million. The following spring, Lewis and Clark became the first to carry the Stars and Stripes across the continent. Enter the 20-star flag. The Congress on April 14, 1818, adopted a resolution that on and after July 4, 1818, the number of stripes should be 13, and that the blue field should carry 1 star for each of the 20 states in the Union, and that a new star should be added for each state thereafter admitted. The year is now 1860. The United States consists of 34 states. By the end of 1861, 11 states have seceded from the Union. In the North, the war was called the War of Rebellion. In the South, the war between the states. The Civil War took place because the Southern states felt they could no longer tolerate their status as members of the Union. That a majority of Southerners were determined to secede should not surprise us, especially when we recall that many Northern abolitionists wished the North to secede from a union tainted with slavery. Enter the Confederate flag. The first Confederate flag, adopted in 1861 by the Confederate Convention in Montgomery, Alabama, was called the Stars and Bars. But because of its similarity in colors to the American flag, there was much confusion at the Battle of Bull Run. To remedy this situation, General Beauregard suggested a battle flag which was used by the Southern armies throughout the war. The flag consisted of a red field on which was placed a blue cross of St. Andrew, separated from the field by a white fillet and adorned with 13 white stars for the Confederate States. 11 states had formally seceded, and unofficial groups in Kentucky and Missouri adopted ordinance of secession. On this basis, these 2 states were admitted to the Confederacy, although the official state governments remained in the Union. The Civil War was the most traumatic experience in the life of the United States. Some 3 million men served in the armies. An average of 430 soldiers died each day of the 4-year war. In the end, almost as many Americans had perished in all of the nation's other wars combined. The continuing progress of this nation was delayed, if not set back, as almost an entire generation evaporated in the flames of battle. From this horror of that conflict emerged the new Union, plus freedom and the promise of equality for Negro slaves. America had never paid such a high price for a definition of its destiny. The year is now 1905. Teddy Roosevelt needs a hero. Roosevelt, a naval historian, was eager to make the United States a great naval power. At that time, we were 7th in the nation as a naval, or 7th in the world as a naval power. And John Paul Jones was his answer. Jones imagined America as a great sea power long before the country had the capacity or the will to become one. Jones, who had died a lonely and forgotten man in Paris at the age of 45, was returned to the United States. On April 24, 1906, Jones was again interred in a crypt beneath the Naval Academy in Annapolis with great fanfare. And within 4 years, the United States Navy was second in the world, only behind the British Navy. Enter the 48-star flag. Since 1818, there has been no change in the flag design except that 28 new stars were added as of July 4th, 1912. This flag of 48 stars flew over this nation for 47 years until just before the Vietnam War. Enter the 50-star flag. July 4th, 1959, a star was added for Alaska, our first non-connected state. And a year later, Hawaii, our island state, added a 50th star. This is our present flag, 50 stars and 13 stripes.
Please stand and salute our flag. As this emblem is first in our hearts as loyal Americans, so it is close to our altar as loyal elves. The gentle breezes with lingering caress kiss the folds of no flag, which can compare with it in beauty. There is no such red in budding rose, falling leaf, or in sparkling wine. No such white in April blossom, in crescent moon, or mountain snow. No such blue in woman's eye, in ocean's depths, or heaven's dome. And no such pageantry of clustering stars and streaming light in all the spectrum of the sea and the sky. Please be seated. Our flag is at once a history, a decoration, and a prophecy. It represents the American nation as it was at its birth. It speaks for what it is today, and it holds the opportunity for the future to add other stars to the constellation. The Benevolent Protective Order of Elks is the first and only fraternal body to require formal observance of Flag Day. In July of 1908, the Grand Lodge of this order at Dallas, Texas, then assembled, provided for an annual nationwide observance of Flag Day on the 14th of June in each year by making it mandatory upon each subordinate lodge of the order. This unique distinction as the originator of the Flag Day is most becoming to the Order of Elks. The order is distinctly American. Only American citizens are eligible to join it, and it has no foreign affiliation. It has linked its destiny with the destiny of our nation, and made this flag a symbol of self-dedication to God, to country, and to fellow men.
The Stars and Stripes, flag of the United States of America, the worldwide hope of all who under God would be free to live and do His will. Upon its fold is written the story of America, the epic of the mightiest and noblest in all history. In the days when people of the old world groveled in abject homage to the heresy of the divine right of kings, a new constellation appeared in the western skies, the Stars and Stripes, symbolizing the divine right of all men to life, liberty, happiness, and peace under endowment by their Creator. To what man is given words adequate to tell the story of the building of this nation? That immortal story is written in blood and sweat, in heroic deeds and unremitting toil, in clearing a primeval forest, and in planting of vast prairies where once the coyote and buffalo roamed. Onward swept the nation, spanning wide rivers, leaping vast mountain ranges, leaving in its path villages and farms, factories and cities, till at last this giant nation stood astride the continent from the Atlantic to the Pacific. This is the heritage of the people of the United States. It has been repurchased by each succeeding generation and must be re-won again, again, and again until the end of time, lest it too shall pass like the ancient empires of Greece and Rome. The price of liberty is eternal vigilance. What was won at Lexington and Concord and Bunker Hill had to be repurchased at Ticonderoga and Yorktown. What John Paul Jones achieved upon the high seas in the War of Independence had to be repurchased by Commodore Perry on Lake Erie in the War of 1812. The prestige of Admiral Dewey's victory at Manila Bay in 1898 was re-won by the naval battles in the seas about the far distant islands of the Pacific after the sneak attacks upon Pearl Harbor and Manila in 1941 had summoned our country to assume its role in World War II. What our troops achieved under the Stars and Stripes at Chateau Thierry and Flanders in World War I, their sons were required to repurchase in World War II in the bloody trek across northern Africa, on the beachheads of Europe, and in the Battle of the Bulge. The flag our American boys raised at Iwo Jima was the same flag later raised in defense of Incheon, Busan, and Pork Chop Hill in far-off Korea. And another generation under the same flag fled to stem the threat of communism in far-off Vietnam. Our young people were again called to carry our flag in defense of a free world in the actions in Grenada and Panama. Willingly, our brave men and women carried our flag in the honor of American people into battle in Operation Desert Storm. And at the moment we are in Afghanistan and Iraq, trying to give freedom to those people. The greatest significance of this flag, however, lies in the influence it has in the hearts and minds of millions of people. It has waved over the unparalleled progress of a nation in developing democratic institutions, scientific and technological knowledge, education, and culture. It has served as a beacon for millions of poor and oppressed refugees abroad and stands as a promise that the underprivileged will not be forgotten. But what is the meaning of the flag of the United States? There can never be a definitive answer to that question. There are people in this world who see it as a symbol of imperialism. Others see it as a destiny of the people. But reference to these and similar views of the flag were resolved by Woodrow Wilson when he said, "This flag which we honor and under which we serve is the emblem of our unity, our power, our thought, purpose as a nation. It has no other character than that which we give it from generation to generation. The choices are ours. Only love, true love of our fellow man, can create peace. The emblem of that love is the stars and stripes, the symbol of the American way of life."
Let's all stand and pledge allegiance to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Please be seated. Before I begin to wind this down, I would like to thank very much Doug Brown and Boy Scouts. Very nice job by a very great organization. Thank you, gentlemen. And I think for all you people sitting around, I think Wally Amberger here has been doing this for years, not only in Iowa, but in California. And he does a great job too. In conclusion of the observance of Flag Day, let us rededicate ourselves to the flag of the United States of America, and may the principles of charity, justice, brotherly love, and fidelity ever increase in each of us. I now declare this service closed. Thank you folks for showing up. Thank you.